Sometimes I just want to punch people in the face.
Hey everyone, it's Andrew Bermudez, co-founder and CEO of Digsy. If you've got commercial real estate properties that you need to sell or lease, we can help you double in more deals. Go list your properties for free at getdigsy.com. So G-E-T, Digsy.com. Well, I've got my wonderful and beautiful co-host. We've got the gentleman with the most beautiful skin in the world, Bucky Beeman.
I don't know what's up with your intros, man. Yes, I'm here.
So Bucky Beeman is from Rochester, Minnesota, and he's with an amazing company called Realty Growth. He's probably the most well-known social media rock star in commercial real estate and makes videos that make the Housewives of Orange County look like it was filmed by a 2-year-old.
Wow. Wow.
And then we've got the wonderful Natalie Wainwright. She is weighing at 37 pounds and knocking down every single commercial real estate brokerage. Her title is tenant rep from Las Vegas, Nevada. And,
you are on a roll this morning. My title is Vice President of the Tenant Rep Division at Logic Commercial here in Sin City, Las Vegas.
Sin City. By the way.
Sin City. I don't mind keeping that moniker.
No, it's great. I love it. And then we've got our amazing friend and mentor who is in the commercial real estate, institutional property management side, and also, larger landlords too. We don't have to discriminate against big and small and medium.
Not at all.
Size. John Combs. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about an interesting topic today. We've seen webinars about this stuff. There's podcasts. There's white papers, a bunch of stuff. And it's really funny is all you see in the commercial real estate is people sharing this information go, hey, you deal with it. Like there hasn't been like a conversation where like you can actually understand it in terms that you're a 2-year-old, like especially a landlord. A landlord gets like a ton of emails, or an asset manager gets a ton of emails. They're not going to sit through a webinar, all this stuff, and then just basically listen to people say the same thing 30 times, which is what's happening is people are just saying the same exact thing. It's like company A sees webinar from company B, and then they basically change the words around and change the graphics and redo that thing. What we're going to talk about today, and hey, if you've got children in the car, please close your ears. 1, 2, 3. How not get fucked when you're actually getting people to re-enter your building and doing re-occupancy. And who better to ask than John Combs, who manages properties for all landlords. He's got a huge portfolio of clients. And you know what? They task him and his organization over at RiverRock Real Estate to make sure that, they can mitigate risk in doing that. So John's always been fun to have on the show. I chat with him probably on a daily basis on LinkedIn or text message or email. We have a blast. So, John, welcome aboard, and let's try to reduce some risk for these people. You were talking a little bit about what you kind of want to like hit the ground running with at the beginning. So I'll just give you the floor and let's get started.
Thank you. There's nothing worse than a boring podcast. And I said to Andrew, I'd be thrilled to come back. What an honor. But I don't want Bucky or Natalie to fall asleep. So what topic can we use to keep them awake and engaged so they might ask some, intelligent questions this round? And so here we go.
Are you getting the shade, Bucky? I'm getting the shade.
Yeah, I threw a little shade. I think that, every year, I think it's Newsweek comes out with what are the business or what are the terms or the new words of the year. And the word that's driving me crazy is pivot. And everybody's saying there's a pivot in the market. There's a pivot with our clients. There's a pivot in lifestyle. There's a pivot with tenants and if they need office space or not. And it's so overused. And being an equestrian, the word pivot is very important when you show horses. And a horse that pivots stabilizes their back outside foot, their rear outside foot, and they move their legs around in a spin. It's a very complicated maneuver in the equestrian business, which I was in for many years. And I think that there's a lot of analogy in that we all, as professionals, have to have a solid foot in the business. We don't need to panic. We don't need to overreact. And we also need to be sure that we're very objective and very well trained on what's going on so we can advise our clients, whether they be occupiers, property owners, other brokers, co-listing brokers, mortgage companies, appraisers, etc. This is another word I can't say it anymore is unprecedented, but this is a time where we all, especially the younger generations, it's new to you, and it's super important that you understand how to get a relationship much more cemented than it would have been prior to COVID or the protests and looting that's going on in the properties. We run 30 million feet on the West Coast in California, Arizona. We have 1,800 tenants, and a third of our tenants requested rent relief in the past month. Only 4 last week requested rent relief at the end of the month for the third month of rent under COVID. And I'm anticipating that maybe out of the 30%, 5% have a real need. And that would be bars, restaurants, movie theaters, people who just cannot be in business. But I think it's very important for you, and if you're a broker, super important for you to take a more consultative, educated relationship with your client. I want to give you an example. I have a trainer at Equinox in San Francisco, and I have a trainer at Equinox in Orange County because I live both places in normal times. And my trainer in Orange County is not at the level in billing and seniority as my trainer in San Francisco. But my trainer in Orange County has stayed in touch via text, phone calls, emails. How are you doing? Are you working out? Is there anything I can help you with on ideas to work from home, to exercise? Keep your program going. We'll get through this. I'll keep you posted when the gym opens. The really senior top trainer, he was number 10 last year in a national chain. He has not reached out once to me. And who am I the most responsible to get back to as soon as the gym's open and I feel comfortable going back to a gym? It's the one that I've been in touch with, the one who hasn't tried to sell me virtual training, hasn't tried to send me, diet plans and all this weird stuff. He cares about how am I doing, and he's trying to help me with what he can do to help me get through this time. And I think that's a great example of a consultative broker today. You are not there to sell them space, convince them to change space. And we are so lucky today because BOMA just distributed this morning on the wire to a select group of us some industry impact results on a survey that they just did on the East Coast. And this is the East Coast, right? But it should be, I think, a representative of where we are anywhere in any market. And they said that they asked the question, are you currently planning to renew your lease? And over half said they're not sure. Well, I'm not sure when I want to go back to the gym. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go back to the gym, but I'm not sure. And I'm in the market today. Savills is representing me in Orange County for 15,000 feet. And I have lease options and I have purchasing options, and I'm not sure which is best. And yeah. I woke up at 2 a.m. thinking no matter what I sign and do, it's probably going to be too high in 3 to 6 months. But I'm boxed in with the lease renewal coming up. I've got to figure out what we're going to do. Are we going to buy a building, or are we going to lease one?
So John, so
the long-term view, because I don't know.
John, really quick.
It's probably high now. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but so it's interesting. So you're bringing not only the property management view, but you're also a tenant in the market right now.
That's right.
Okay, great. So
I understand that mentality of, it's probably too early to sign. I probably can get a better deal, but I have to execute our relocation, whether it be in a new lease or acquisition and TI of a new building. And I know that it's going to be, if I do it today, I've just been through too many cycles. I'm going to be going too high to get a deal done, but I'm willing to do that because I think the long term, which is the real estate view, I'll be okay. But I know I could get a better deal if I could just wait longer. if that
Yeah.
makes sense to you.
And let's pull the thread on that, because so you got two things. You've got, people in the market that are hitting, we've seen this in every cycle, John. We've seen when people, see it in the residential side or think there's something, and then they're shocked when they see the commercial real estate market has not reacted to what they expect. And that's every single cycle, right? From 2007, 2008 to what happened in the late 90s with the dot-com companies. But then we also have the existing tenants. It sounds like most of the people are actually paying rent, which is fantastic. But the thing is about re-occupancy, a lot of people are still working from home, but then there's all of these different things. Like, how do you, with a 6-foot distancing thing, like, what do you do in the lobbies? What do you do in the elevator? So can we talk a little bit about that? Like,
yeah.
What are some of the things, like, you have this 6-foot distancing thing, but when you look at the elevators, they're tiny, right? So, I mean, how can somebody get screwed? How can a landlord get screwed? And also, how can a broker get screwed for leasing a building, and then all of a sudden they've got, potential challenges and trying to even get the people up to a space?
Can I ask a question from a tenant standpoint? Because any tenant rep that's listening to this is screaming at their radio or whatever they're listening to this on. So as a tenant, what about just extending for 6 months to a year? I've heard there's a ton of new development in your market, and really get a feel for the market and give yourself that cushion. Have you examined that opportunity?
If you sound like a seasoned professional to even suggest that to a tenant. And that's what I'm proposing to everyone. I have Brad Schmidt, who's an amazing broker, former student at NAOP, YPG, who is representing us from Savills. And he has to have credibility to me. He has to present things that aren't going to give him the best commission.
Absolutely.
But it's a long-term relationship, like that trainer in Orange County. And I think that if there's one thing I can tell you as a potential client, a tenant in the market, or having, 1,800 tenants and 30 million feet, the credibility and the education that you can provide to a customer is so important, and it will provide you with a very wonderful future career and relationship that won't be forgotten. And I just can't stress enough that don't call and push or drive. And I want to give you an example to answer your question. On Monday, we formally opened our offices. Now, we're an essential business as a property management company, but we haven't formally opened our office. And when you come into the building, the landlord has signage. It says, for example, stay 6 feet apart in an elevator when the elevator is not 6 feet apart, which I thought was kind of interesting.
What's the size of the elevator?
And it's probably 5 feet.
Got it.
So they have 2 X's in each corner, and that's the best they could do, right? They can't change the elevator.
Best you can do. What are you going to do? Yeah.
Yeah, they have tissue to push the elevator button. They have, you come up the elevator and you're supposed to wear a mask to get in. The buildings have been locked. They were opened on Monday, but yesterday they had protests, so they locked the building down, which they should have done for safety. Even in Newport Beach, this is by Fletcher Jones Motor Cars, the largest Mercedes dealer in the country, and across the street we have a lockdown. Unprecedented, right? Pivot, right? Pivot. Anyway, so you come into our office, the door is open with signage that's required by the state for employers. You have signs that tell you which direction to walk. You have to wear a mask. We offer gloves, Purell stands all over the place. It's uncomfortable. And so the day that we had shelter in place, I went home and it was so uncomfortable for me. I didn't typically work full-time from home. I don't have a desk at home. And I had to create a desk, and I had to bring my inbox home, and then referral papers and things that I needed to do my job. And I had to use my cell phone and charge it because it kept running out because I was constantly on the phone. People were over communicating. It was super uncomfortable. And then guess what? I started to like it. I could run to the grocery store and get something for lunch to cook or heat up. And it became efficient. I could work out from home on a virtual reality, and then I could go shower, and I was at my office. And it became not only comfortable, but efficient. Well, when we announced we were opening the offices on Monday, I had a lot of second thoughts about it. And we were in teams, and so out of 50 people at the home office, maybe 10, 15 would be there. And we surveyed our employees, and guess what? The majority said they wanted to work from home, but they missed their friends at the office, and they wanted to come in 1 to 2 days a week. That 80% survey is what we're seeing on portfolios, in my friends' companies. We're all seeing that 80% want to work from home. Do they want to full time? No way. You know, divorces are up, kids are being,
created,
taped to the floor, restraining cages. I'm teasing, of course, but you know what I mean. So people want to come in 1 or 2 days a week. So we're out looking for space. I need 15,000 feet. Well, do I really need 15,000 feet if 80% of my workforce is going to work from home, or would hotel, or would, and so, by the way, the broker, Brad Schmidt at Savills, did an RFP. It was at 15,000 feet. It had 50 people, 50 workstations. Some were private, some were bench, right? All of a sudden we had to say, well, we can't do bench. And are we going to hotel? And how are we going to figure out who can hotel? And, as senior leadership, we were hesitant about work in place, work from home. We didn't believe in it. We thought I hate to say we didn't trust our teams, but we didn't trust that it would work out is the better answer.
John, here's the one thing that I was going to say is it's so funny because I run a tech company in commercial real estate, and we can work from anywhere, but yeah. I was a commercial real estate broker for 13 years when I met you, when I was at Lee & Associates, and I had this bias against working from home because you can simply just walk to somebody's desk, etc. My team has been pushing, and I wouldn't say my team because they don't work for me, they work with me. So our team has been more productive and happier. They do miss the office, like your team's communicating to you, but what we're seeing that there's a lot of benefits where to having this flexibility. And it's really interesting that you've been surveying, and was the number correct? 80% of people want that flexibility and maybe come in for the social component like once or
That's
twice
right.
a week. Is that, did I get the numbers right?
That's exactly right. And what we've said is, while we're open for business, you are in teams, and these are the days you can come to work if you choose to, but we aren't mandating it, because if someone got COVID while they came to the office and they didn't want to come to the office, I don't want that liability.
Yeah.
And
Makes
I don't
sense.
want them emotionally in that space where they're uncomfortable. So we opened on Monday. My president, my CFO, and I were all here. There were probably, out of 50 people, 12, which we've not seen in months in the office. And I got to tell you, it was super uncomfortable. I was really not comfortable. I was as uncomfortable being here with 12 people as I was the day I went home without a desk to start working. And it's a re-entry. It's almost in reverse, the emotions of it and the fear when you read that there could be a spike and, we're opening too soon. And so as a broker or a real estate professional with users, occupiers, property owners, landlords, you've got to understand that we're all in this together. And because of the pandemic, we all were sharing a lot more than we typically did in the real estate world. It's kind of I always thought that the real estate world was much more camaraderie than other businesses that are dog eat dog, like stock market brokers or financial planners or interior designers or things like that. But we've always been collaborative, but we're super collaborative today. I mean, I can call someone at a competitive company and they're going to tell me what they're seeing, hearing, and doing, because we all are trying to figure out, how do you get a tenant in the middle of a lease to be comfortable with committing to space when they know the market is going to soften at some point? And maybe it's concessions up front, maybe it's lease rates down the road, and maybe it's not going to happen at all, and there's going to be this, curve like some people have predicted, where things are going to be okay. But in the most recent BOMA survey, and remember this is the East Coast, 57% of occupiers said that it's going to transform their workspace. And I think that we're in the middle of a RFP where we're going to have to transform our workspace. Do we need 15,000 feet? Maybe we still need the same amount, but the composite of what is workspace private versus, spaced out general meeting space versus the coffee bar those are all, or the cafe, which is what the new term is. Those are all things that are important to think about. And the last part of the survey that I thought super interesting is 62% of office tenants see less value in their physical space than they had before. I think there's the same value, but it's going to be used differently. And I just read where one of the big employers had just eliminated a bunch of private offices and workstations and created big meeting rooms that could be physically spaced out, because people are working at home 3 days a week, but when they come in, they need to collaborate.
So it's almost like the offices are turning into like co-working spaces for like their company.
but spread out.
Yeah.
Not the WeWork bench.
Where like you're like next to each other and people are sneezing on you.
But right now, our kitchen cafe is closed. We aren't sharing the refrigerators, the coffee makers, nothing. I have to leave in a little while to go to a real estate amazing guy passed away at 94 in Long Beach. I'm leaving to go to his service in Shiva this afternoon. And I'm uncomfortable, but there's only 15 people invited. And the Shiva has pre-packaged food. It's not catered. And I'm going to sit outside. Right?
Yeah.
So we're all at a different point. I know Natalie's out showing space. I was so proud of her getting out there, and it just like revived.
So happy to be back out. Yeah.
I know. I could tell you were so happy. And Bucky's out doing deals too. And it's awesome to see that on social media. It gives me comfort and confidence that we can move forward. And I'm at the point now where we're probably going to sign a lease or buy a building. And, we have seen a little softening in those offering levels, not where it's probably going to be in 6 months, but that's okay. We have to make a decision and get relocated or stay, as Natalie suggested, for 6 months to a year, stay here, and then go back out. And, I've got to tell you, my broker, who's super aggressive and assertive and I adore, I think he's awesome, he would be okay with whatever we decide that we felt best with. And that's the kind of professional I think you all should be, that you're okay with your clients, with their decisions, because we're all human and we're all at different parts of this journey in new territory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it comes back to the consultative thing. So here's what I'm going to do, John. I have several questions. I know Natalie and Bucky do too. So I'm going to just kind of, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to kind of get these in here for the audience. So you're a tenant in the market. You're also, you have 30 million square feet and you've got tenants of all kinds of, office buildings, et cetera. Even though it seems like we might need less space or more flexible spaces to accommodate people coming in, let's say 1, 2, 3 times a week, are you noticing the square footages are going smaller when people are searching, or are they staying constant because you need that 6 feet apart?
I think it's constant. And it's like, our mall's going to die. Heavens no. They're not going to die. Our restaurant's going to die. Heavens no.
Yeah.
I ate out for the first time Saturday. It was super weird.
It is really weird. Was the menu on your phone? Did they give you the menu and you scan the barcode? Yeah.
And as long as I got that glass of wine at lunch, I was okay. I calmed down. I didn't want anyone sitting next to me, but I went out and did it. And it's going to come back. And so I think that, what someone said is, be wary of this hype about work from home. It's a hype.
Yes.
It's all these words that we're using. But office space is going to be needed no matter what. It's just, how is it used?
Yeah.
And how can you be comfortable getting people to come back to work, people to come back to the building, people to go back to the restaurant, go to the mall? I have to go to a funeral. How are we going to get comfortable with the clients? And I just think that you give them space and time and stay educated, and it will all eventually come back. But if you push it, it's like a relationship. If one person wants something more than the other, it's never going to work out.
Yeah, you can't push a noodle, right? Like, when it's like floppy and it's on your kitchen counter and you're like try to push it and it's just stuck in one place. So the next question is, since you're seeing it not only as a tenant in the market, but you're also seeing it in your portfolios, right?
Correct.
If you can't have more than 2 people in an elevator, where technically you should have 1 since it's not 6 feet, are the tenants that you're seeing, are you seeing that they're like, what's the pattern? Like, how are they doing reentry, and are landlords concerned about, the quote unquote plans that they're executing to keep people healthy and coming back to the office?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue for landlords is how do you get people up and down the buildings and high rises and the elevators? It's already affected where we've seen a lift on construction. How do you get 200 workers to 435 to build out the space and do it quickly where, they're working 8 hours in their union? And so it's a big, big issue. And what some landlords are doing is they're opening the stairwells and allowing people to go up and down the stairwells to get to their space rather than waiting on the elevator. And there's all kinds of questions about, with fire marshal and is that safe, and if the doors are propped open and all that. But we are seeing even in this building where they'll have one-way directions. There's 2 stairwells per floor, one up and one down.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Yeah,
to take the stairs and get the steps on my pedometer, then wait for an elevator and ride with someone I don't know who might be coughing. But it's absolutely an issue, and therefore we have a huge construction management practice, and we're not seeing any softening in TI dollars, construction costs. In fact, we're seeing increases because of the limitations for loading the floors for build outs and all the signage and requirements that are of contractors to get their permits to do their jobs. It's not letting up. And we all traditionally in previous cycles saw construction costs soften, and they're not. They're actually going up.
So let's talk about this, right? So construction costs are going up, and it's counterintuitive. You think that in a recession things will go down,
Correct.
But actually demand is actually going up for these services. People just don't want to work because they don't want to put themselves at risk, right? And it makes sense. It's counterintuitive. People look at this as a possible recession, or they take it akin to that. That's where there's such a big disconnect between expectations on the market and what's really happening is like, no, the demand is there, just you can't hire the people because they don't want to take risks. So guess what? That means prices go up, which is counterintuitive. But there's tenants out there asking, hey, whoever comes into the building, take their temperature and all this stuff. And before the show, John, we were talking about some legalities that are very questionable in the gray area as to what a landlord can do and can't do. And even if a landlord wants to keep them safe, they can get their asses sued for doing some of these things. So let's talk about that.
Okay, well, we just saw in updated orders in San Diego County and Santa Clara. In the order, employers are to take temp checks of all employees entering the workforce. That is completely against HIPAA and puts us all at risk. And it's an example of a municipality trying to keep people safe, but not understanding the legalities of what they're ordering.
Yeah.
And it's a huge problem. But in Santa Clara right now and in San Diego, we have to do temp checks in our offices in those locations. And that Santa Clara just got announced yesterday. So I think that, building landlords, as far as I know, are not doing temp checks except in high rises. And many of them have installed software and technology that reads temperature checks of people without them knowing. And then the security guards in the lobbies are stopping them and saying, you have a fever, you can't enter. But huge liability. And I would not want to be in that job.
Did they install software, or did they just go hire the little alien
that reads temperature as you walk in, and it's on a screen and tells them that that person has fever?
No, I don't think that's what it is. I think that somebody called Arnold Schwarzenegger and got a hold the telephone number for Predator, and now everybody hired the whole Predator community that's out of work because of COVID, and they put them in like little things, and they can like sit there.
I want whatever you take, Andrew. I really do. Can you please send it over?
Andrew, my screen is showing you have a very high fever and you're hallucinating.
It must have been the shrimp. It must have been the mushrooms I ate this morning in my omelet. Yeah, but I mean that makes sense. But yeah, it's questionable whether you can do these things or not. But it is a funny thing, right? Like, you're trying to keep people safe. At the same time, your business is, renting space. I mean, your subscription business is essentially renting space out. People aren't occupying it. There's unknowns about, hey, are my tenants going to? The good news is what you were sharing, John. I mean, if we circle back and kind of bring the first half of this thing in, is, hey, people are paying rent and they want to keep their spaces. It sounds like even you in the market are not shrinking your footprint, yet you're changing your operation internally to be able to accommodate what we've discovered, are the preferences not only employees, but what actually keeps them more productive. Like what you were mentioning earlier was, hey, you're a lot more efficient, but efficient means not all the time, but it means that, hey, you're happier and there's productivity behind that, because the 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes that you'd be on the freeway, you've done your workout, you're taking a shower, you've gotten nourishment, and now you're on your email and your Outlook, right? So it's a really delicate thing about what the landlords and they can do. But what about brokers? Like, I don't want necessarily the opinion, but when your team's out there, showing space, or they're encountering with brokers, and I wanted to include the tone deaf individuals. I also wanted to include the individuals who are being very careful and thoughtful about how to show space, etc. Like, what are you seeing that their individuals are advising on? I'm not sure if you can hear my dogs, but obviously it's COVID, so
sure can. Yeah,
the dog is here. But what are you seeing out there that, like, are the brokers setting the wrong expectations as far as flexibility on pricing? Like, what are some of the red flags that you would say, hey, Mr. Landlord, Mrs. Landlord, be careful if your marketing team is doing this when they're leasing out your building, because it can come back and bite you in the ass?
Well, it's so unknown right now. I mean, we had a deal to lease some space in a great building with a TI allowance and a term that was acceptable. And we had a building we went to look at to buy, and they refused to lower their price. Their business is doing great, and they refused to lower their price at all to what I thought would be at least a market deal. The landlord on the big lease said, give us a chance to try to value engineer the TI price, and then we'll see what we can do in concessions up front, but we're not going to lower the rate. So that's kind of, I think, where the market is today, is maybe some concessions up front, not necessarily a softening in rates. And they really try to value engineer the TIs as best they can. We need to pivot and talk about the impact of the protests and looting at some point before we hang up today, because that's having an impact as well on everything. But just when you thought it couldn't get weirder with COVID, now we have that. And from the professionals I talk to in the security industry, this isn't going away this week or this weekend. It's going to happen for a while, and it's definitely impacting. We had to evacuate many buildings, and we had many buildings with graffiti and attempted looting. And I don't know if you saw my LinkedIn post, but Neiman Marcus is boarded up in Fashion Island, which is like ground zero.
Yeah.
They shut down Fashion Island at 5 yesterday. You can't turn into the parking lots. Police were everywhere, barricaded. Mm-hmm. Same thing with South Coast Plaza. They were looting South Coast Plaza on Saturday. It's unbelievable what's happening between the protests and then the looting. And today at 11, we got notice that there will be 3 protests in Newport Beach, of all places.
Newport Beach? Don't those kids have better things to do?
Imported in on buses for the protest versus the looting.
Yeah.
It's 2 separate issues. And, I have an office building on Lancashire that's boarded up. It's an office building, but we had to board it up, and graffiti was everywhere. In Oakland, we had guards in the lobby. In the center of San Francisco, all the retailers in the square were broken into, except for Nike, because Nike had 8 guards in the lobby with armed, and they didn't go in there.
Yeah.
And it was a target.
Nike was ready.
Yeah, Nike was ready.
Demographic that would be going after Nike. So
thinking about that, you got weapons to protect your shoes, man. What about? But the banks can't do that to protect their tellers.
But like John said, it's two different things. We've got protesters that are peaceful and they're for a cause, and I would be out there with them if it wasn't for the looters and the rioters that ruin and incite anger. So I think it's two different, like you said, two different conversations.
But like the pandemic, it's in every locale. It's not just in urban cave areas anymore. And so anyway, Bucky, don't we call those sneakers? They're not called tennis shoes, right?
Yeah, right.
Sneaks, John.
Sneaks. Okay. Yeah. Or kicks.
Some kicks. Oh, kicks. Look at you. Yeah, some kicks.
Kicks. That's funny. Hey, so John, and I want to get Bucky and Natalie's opinions because they're on the ground. I'm not a broker anymore. We're on the technology and marketing side for commercial real estate, but they're on the ground talking to tenants, talking to business owners. You know what concerns me is this, right? And we've seen it in every cycle. This cycle is different because it was initiated through a disease, right? And are landlords being short-sighted by not taking the deal and lowering the rate? Because I mean, office space, for example, the vacancy rates in office never get as low as industrial, right? In industrial, for example, Orange County hit 1%. So 1 out of 100 buildings was vacant, and they had rows of people trying to get in the door so they could move vacancy that. But in my whole experience when I was an office broker and flex broker, and then I moved to investments, it's always been around like that 12 to 24% in a bad market. Right now, I think the last number I saw last week was like on average across the nation was 16% vacancy. Like, not taking a deal, like there's that saying, right? A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, right? And you're not lowering this, and there's being a change in the workforce and the way that people are utilizing space, right? There are people who aren't making money. 80% of the market is small businesses, sub 5,000 square feet. What can we convey to landlords, and not in a way to spook them, but just speaking from feeling and seeing the sentiment in the market from their consumer standpoint, meaning the tenant or the person who's going to occupy that facility. Is there a disconnect where they're basically saying, oh, I don't want it, and then all of a sudden, 6 months from now, vacancy might go up because of the changes in consumer behavior for space? Like, I'm curious to see if right now some building owners are being short-sighted about this.
Natalie?
Oh, I've got so much to say. I think the tenants are being more short-sighted than the landlords. And I think this is business and we take the feeling out of it. I haven't seen landlords in my market not willing to be it's a little bit softened, right? It's not so much a landlord's market because our vacancy rates are so extraordinarily low in Las Vegas on the office sector. I think that we take the feeling out of it and it has to pencil. And so I'm really against brokers that are leveraging a global pandemic and leveraging what we have now with the protests to get a better deal with a landlord. It needs to be fair for both parties. And so and I think it makes sense for John and Bucky because they're both landlords. But I see more tenants being short-sighted with this whole work from home. And I love to hear John saying he might still need 15,000 square feet because you probably will. And so until we flush out, it's going to take about 6 months to a year to flush out if work from home is really working, especially for certain personality types and certain positions. Administrators, my assistant, we should be in an office together. I think I'd get more productive workout because we're together. And so I think that anybody that's leasing space based off of work from home being so great is extremely short-sighted. So I say short-sighted on the tenant side, less on the landlord side. That's
so the reason John didn't tell you, but like part of the reason why he actually still needs 15,000 feet instead of less when people aren't, there's some flexibility there, is because John and I started a side business. So we're actually turning the thing into a club after 5 p.m. And we're going to have, cocktails. We're going to have people dancing. We're going to record TikTok videos. So just
for people that are just listening and not watching, all of us just bowed our head.
I don't know what Andrew had for breakfast, but I want some.
Yeah.
It's called just why not have fun, right?
The fact is that there are a number of large landlords who have really turned negative on certain brokers who are trying to take advantage of a 2-month, 60-day phenomenon and trying to push their way. And I just still say you can't, as you said, Andrew, push a noodle. I still say that as fiduciaries and professionals, even though we might represent one side of an equation, you still have to understand and recognize the other side of that equation and who you're negotiating with. And if you don't do that, it's not going to work. And so to answer your question about these tenants and signing deals, I think a landlord says, who are the quality credit tenants that are going to have a business going forward? And those are the tenants I'm going to try to work with to keep. Who are the tenants who have low credit, who are already in trouble, who could, right now, all they're focused on is can they pay their bills? They're dark, they're closed, or they're, on furloughed teams.
That's tough.
The landlord is saying, those are the tenants I'm not sure I can work with, maybe, but I'm not going to give them a great deal. And then you have everything in between. And so, the tenants that are struggling trying to figure out rent, they might,
because the economy shut down.
They might make it if they got PPP loans. The question is really, what is our government going to do, and SBA and IRS, with those loans? And I happen to be a big recipient of a loan. And I don't know, is it going to be taxed? Is it going to be forgiven as originally, proposed? Is it going to be required to be paid back? Are they going to extend the period of payback? Are they going to raise the rate on the loan? I mean, I have never seen a loan program offered that so many people subscribe to that they're changing the rules as we go, and different groups have different rules on it. And until we all are comfortable with that, while we have the loans, and I haven't spent, I've paid out of the loan for my payroll like you're supposed to, but I don't know if I have any of that left over to help pay for a lease or an obligation or a TI or anything else. So I think that a lot of the landlords took the position, go get a PPP loan and pay your rent. And people did that, but there's going to be a group of those people that either can't pay it back if it's required, or forgot it's going to get taxed and that their tax rate. So I think that once that gets cleared up, you're going to see a big surge on transactions that you hadn't seen before. I mean, I have friends that have 2 million plus loans that, they didn't really need the money, although it helped them. But it could help them go forward with their other deals. So,
but you know what? They're still
going to spike.
What most people don't know is a lot of the PPP loans, Natalie, you might be shaking your head. A lot of the money from the second tranche is unclaimed. People aren't doing anything.
Because they're getting denied for their credit, and their credit was fine 2 months ago when it hit, and because they haven't been able to pay any of their bills because their doors were completely shut, SBA is now pulling credit and denying people that desperately need
SBA is pulling credit now.
They're pulling credit, and they're denying people that if they would have pulled it 2 months ago, they had a great credit score. Now they haven't been able to pay anything. Their credit score dropped. So if they would have pulled credit from 2 months ago, they would have given them the loan. So we are killing small business.
You have SBA and you have IRS, and both have ability to rule on this until our government clarifies with the original intent, I hope. But it is impacting decisions from companies, especially the weak sisters. Now, the stronger credit companies that, the Twitters and the people at Facebook that say, we're going to permanently let you work from home if you want, they're fine. And they're still going to need corporate real estate space, and they're out leasing right now. But the weak tenants, maybe the movie theaters, when are they going to ever be able to open? Or the spas and gyms? These are the people who really are in trouble. And I don't know, I just read an article that if you have a movie theater, even if it's modern with the sloped flooring, the stadium kind of seating, it might be time to just destroy it, level it, and put a normal retail space in there for use, because who's going to go in there? Another weak theater,
Well, Amazon's trying to buy
AMC.
Yeah. Bucky, what about you?
Amazon's trying to buy everything. I think it's awesome.
No, they're also trying to buy JCPenney out of bankruptcy.
They're going to get into real estate. You watch. They're going to buy Amazon's cash could buy CB tonight, and they wouldn't even have to report it.
Yeah.
So just wait. They're going to get into our business. It's going to be one of the things, and I predicted this a year ago, and I still believe it's going to happen.
You know that most consumers don't know they have an idea, but they don't know how deep the number of businesses that Amazon is in.
Just look at the street every day and the deliveries, and you'll see.
They don't even talk about it. You can actually
go to my front door.
Well, it's not only delivery. It's not only that. It's also, most of the technology companies run on Amazon Web Services. Our company Digsy runs on that too. We use some of their technologies. Not only that, but
Amazon Cloud right now. All of our 130 people.
Yeah, they run virtual desktops. They do things outside of technology, which they basically do what's called Mechanical Turk. Like if you want people to look at images and make sure that the inappropriate ones are flagged, which a lot of companies need this, you actually use Amazon's network of people throughout the world, and you pay them like 5 cents per picture to do this stuff. There's so much stuff they're into. Now they're getting into cargo, etc. I would like to hear from Bucky, because Bucky, for example, is the dominator, the official dominator of Rochester, Minnesota. And he does every single commercial real estate deal needs to go through him, even if it's from a competitor, or else it doesn't get done, because he's boss. And he may not look Italian, but the Italians are really afraid of him. So, Bucky, what about you? Like, are you seeing a disconnect? Are landlords being short-sighted? Come on.
I guess I'll speak to some of the small business conversations I've had. And I was one this week with a restaurant owner, and he said, this is when you're going to see us starting to fail, because our government here has said, okay, restaurants, you can open, but you can only open outside, and you can only have a percentage of your people outside, and no one can come inside. So we're turning up the bills again from staff and overhead and things of that nature. They're bringing in food, and he goes, this is the time you're going to see us really struggle. So I thought that was interesting. And then a conversation I had this morning was with a transportation company that has a lot of buses, and they just invited me in, and they're inviting other community members in to basically, sit in a bus and just say, what do you have for ideas for us? We're just trying to think outside of the box here. And so if you think about how these industries are going to be affected, I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg of how these industries and medium to small businesses are really going to shape and change over the course of time. One of the questions I had for you, John, is okay, we find a vaccination. It's 2, 3, 4 years from now. Does business turn back to as we know it ever again? Or are we now always conscious of a virus pandemic to pop up and our spaces stay the same, in the way they're designed for the future? What's your thoughts to that?
Well, I think it's kind of like the concerts after the shooting in Vegas. I mean, I had a trip to Paris where there was a crowd I ran. I wouldn't get any crowds in Paris. Was I safe? Probably. But in the back of my head, I always was very aware of what was around me and the surroundings after those shootings, because I had friends actually at that concert that survived. And so I think that we're always going to remember the pandemic, because, this is like something no one's been through, shutting down America or the world. Mm-hmm. And it will impact it. And I want to give you an example, because I'm learning every day with new experiences. And so we created a deck for our culture, that we were going to do road shows to all our regional offices and talk about what makes RiverRock, what's its secret sauce, what makes us special and different. And we plan to purposely go in 2 weeks to all the offices and kind of welcome them back and see them face to face, because we're a people business, and present our culture deck. And we had employees in Northern California say, if you and your president, Steve, are going to fly up, even on Jet Suite X, which is, I think capacity is 20, you're going to compromise yourself, and we don't want to be in a meeting with you. Even if we're going to meet outside in a park, social distancing, you were on a plane for an hour with recycled air. Now, maybe 3 out of 40 people said that, but I listened to everybody, and so we canceled our trip.
Yeah.
I was willing to go. I was going to wear a mask on the plane, but it's just a little too soon.
Yeah.
And so this is why I think that it's a little too soon to define like the new normal or where it's going to be or will it return. But I think that we all are eager to get back to work and be in business and be successful. And it may be a little too soon that we're doing this, but we're gonna be okay, and it will return. It just means maybe instead of 15,000 feet, I need 14,500, but I don't need all the workstations anymore. I need more big meeting areas, you know? And so I can't answer that yet, but I'm real attentive and trying to make the best decision I can based on what I'm getting in feedback and talking to everyone else. And that's my advice to everybody. Stay in touch with your peer group, your the most senior people you know in the business. Get their advice, hear their stories, and try to apply them. And you'll be fine. We're all going to be fine.
That's fantastic. I think that's a great place to end this. John, thank you for coming on board again, man. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for coming again, John. And can we do something with John? Sorry to Andrew. Can we do something where it's rapid fire? Because I have so many questions and thoughts. And so I think if we do like a rapid fire session sometime, maybe like next month, if you'll come back on, I would love that, because I think there's so many questions that as a tenant rep I'm thinking, and then because you're able to give the landlord and the tenant side. So I have questions for you.
That's a great idea. I love that. Yeah. And Bucky, by the way, Natalie Wainwright's Italian too, by the way.
I am. So yeah. I am Bucky. I'm going to bring Bucky in.
You might want to send her an invoice.
Wow.
He's the dominator.
You guys are a blast. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Love you, dudes.
Have a good one.
Bye, Natalie.